there was some kind of a dissatisfaction which basically arose from the fact that I found that even the successful clients are not really happy with the outcome. She would not respond. She'll just smile and say, let them decide, but I'll let them decide. This is how she would respond. So when the mediation failed, actually, it did not result in a settlement.
A family dispute resolution between the father and the son. When he resolved it, it seems the father told Mr. Sriram Panchu that yours is not a mediation center, it is a temple, because I have got my son back now.
You don't own the problem, therefore you don't own the solution.
Correct.
So the moment you take the responsibility of settling the matter, you're owning the problem.
Hello and welcome to the 4th episode of the Mediators Talk podcast by Samvad Mediation Center. I am K.S. Sarma, a senior faculty of Samvad Mediation Center, besides being an accredited mediator of IAAM, an executive educator and a collaboration coach. We have with us today Mr. A.J. Jawad. Truly speaking, he doesn't need any introduction because anyone in India who knows about mediation knows A.J. Jawad. He's a global trainer at ADR ODR International. He has been with the MCPC Supreme Court of India and the High Courts for a long time, training judicial officers, advocates, and others in mediation. He is also an internationally renowned mediator and internationally renowned mediation trainer, besides being a fine gentleman and who possesses all the qualities that a mediator needs to possess. I'm one who has developed a great admiration for him over the last 6 or 7 years I came in touch with him. Jawad, I heard that you had a great legal practice, which you gave up years ago to build a career in mediation. And that too, when mediation had not really picked up in our country. That was indeed a bold decision for which I congratulate you. I desire to know what triggered you to switch your profession. If there was no specific trigger, at least the reasons which made you to switch the profession from the adversarial process of dispute resolution to mediation. You must have been well aware that when you gave up legal practice for mediation, you were going on a voyage into the unknown. There might have been ups and downs. The sea might have been rough, it might have been choppy. So I desire to know about your experiences, because that could be an inspiration and guidance for all those who aspire to become mediators. Over to you, Jawad.
First of all, Sharma sir, thank you very much for the very kind introduction. I hope I deserve everything that you have said about me. And I'm also very grateful to the Samvad Mediation Center for inviting me for this podcast, and that too with somebody whom I really admire and I have worked with and had the privilege of learning from. So thank you very much for having me here, sir. Now, to answer your question, see, I enrolled as a lawyer way back in 1988, which is almost, I think, about 36 years now, if I'm not wrong. So in the litigation practice, I didn't know any other alternative at that time because the concept of mediation was totally unknown. But there was some kind of a dissatisfaction which basically arose from the fact that I found that even the successful clients are not really happy with the outcome. And there was something which I felt was missing. I could not really place my finger on it. And then what happened was approximately in 2006, I was wondering how I missed seeing the board earlier, but that board, I believe, was put up in 2005, and it read Tamil Nadu Mediation and Conciliation Center. So I noticed it for the first time, and I was intrigued by it, and I thought, let me find out what this is all about, and I went inside. And I was told that, this is the Mediation and Conciliation Center. And basically, the idea was to get the courts to refer the disputes to mediation and resolve the disputes in the in the mediation center with the help of mediators. I was very curious. I was asked to meet Mr. Sriram Panchu, who was then who was actually instrumental in setting this up, along with the then Chief Justice Markandeya Kadju. So I met Mr. Panchu, and he told me what this is all about. And he said that there is a training which is coming up, and Geeta Ravindra from the Supreme Court of Virginia was there, who was going to be conducting the training. So he said, "Why don't you take part in the training?" So I underwent the training, and that was a sort of a eureka moment for me. Like it was a revelation, because I really was able to place my finger on what exactly was wrong with the system. Because I realized that we are focusing on facts and law, when conflict is essentially a very human thing which happens. Okay, there is a human element to conflict, and it is not just about facts and law. And facts are also, we don't understand that facts are a matter of perspective, but we understand more that, facts which can be proved under the law. So in law, what facts can be proved are alone facts, and if they can't be proved, they are not considered as facts. But what we were forgetting was the human element, as I said, and the fact that, people have their perspectives, they have their perceptions, they have their emotions, which actually drive the conflict. And without really addressing that element, there cannot be a holistic resolution of any conflict. A dispute, of course, is the manifestation of the larger conflict. And I felt that this was something that was really missing in our system, and which was much needed. So I was drawn into it. I loved the process. And I was empaneled with the mediation center. I was doing a number of mediations. There were some referrals. And then I got trained as a trainer also, because there were no trainers locally. So I was asked whether I would be interested in getting trained as a trainer. And the same Geeta Ravindra conducted a trainer's training program for us. So I, along with a few of my colleagues, including Umar Ramanathan, Justice Bharat Chakravarti, who was then not a judge, so we all got trained as trainers, and we started doing the training programs. So this was how I actually came into mediation. And a few years later, I decided that litigation is not really my cup of tea, and mediation was something which resonated with who I am. So I decided that, okay, let me give up litigation practice and come into mediation. It was a very difficult decision, for which I'm very grateful to my wife for the support that she gave me, because it meant giving up a large chunk of my income, and meant making a lot of compromises at the family level also, because I could not make the kind of money that I was making as a lawyer. So it was a tough journey, but I was able to somehow make ends meet by doing arbitrations, by doing some consultations, and through referrals. So that is how I managed to survive. But today, I would say that I'm in a much better position, because we are doing trainings at a professional level, as you and I have done a few times. And apart from that, there are mediations that are coming from the private mediation side, that is pre-litigation mediations, where the pay is fairly good, and also we get the satisfaction of doing the work. So things are looking up very well now. So I'm looking for a bright future. Though, being above 60 to talk about future sounds kind of, uh, far-fetched, but I'm a very optimistic person. I always say I'm 62 going on 26. So I do look forward to a very bright future, thanks to the Mediation Act, and thanks to the fact that people like you and many others have really developed this interest in mediation.
This is what all the great entrepreneurs and professionals had done. They went after their passion, and without looking at immediate gains, or without thinking about what they would be losing by switching over profession, they pursued. And ultimately, they were rewarded, not only in terms of job satisfaction, but also in terms of pecuniary benefits. And you stand a testimony to that. So, passion is what is important, for anyone to excel in any profession. When you were mentioning this, I'm reminded of what the great French writer Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said. He said, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to go to the forest. to gather wood, to saw it, and to nail the planks together. Instead, teach them the desire for the sea. Teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. So generally, we think that to build a ship, what we need is a material. But he says material is not what is needed. The passion, a voyage, the desire to go on a voyage to the sea, and that is what made you to excel in this profession.
And in fact,
Uh,
as you have seen, so the trainings that we have done together, we have tried to make it as a transformative experience for people who undergo the training. Because there has to be a change in the very personality of the person who aspires to be a mediator. You cannot, be a bad communicator and be a mediator. You have to be a good communicator. You have to be a very empathetic person. So we try to bring about this transformation also when the training we with the training we do, because the quotation that you gave just now, it's very apt to this, because you have to develop in people the love for people, the care for people, and the compassion. So without that, you can't really be a good mediator. And that strongly believe in that. And I've had the privilege of working with you, and I could see that you also believe in the same principles.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I very much agree with what you said. The transformation that takes place in the people who undergo mediation and who practice mediation. I recollect in the last training program that we conducted jointly at Hyderabad, Professor Mallesham, a dean of
Yeah.
Hyderabad University, sorry, not Osmania University, he made a very interesting statement at the end. He said, I don't know whether I will practice as a mediator because he is an engineering faculty. I don't know whether I would practice as a mediator, but one thing I declare, now I have become a better human being than what I was when I joined this course. What do you think was the most satisfying experience while conducting mediation? You have conducted, of course, a number of mediations, matrimonial, family, commercial, international, cross-border mediations, etc. I wonder whether you can recollect one mediation which gave you a lot of joy, immense satisfaction.
We always talk about developing trust and rapport with the parties in conflict when you're sitting as a mediator. And we also talk about what is called as a strategic trust, which parties have in you as a professional mediator, which then gets transformed into emotional trust, where the parties trust you as a friend and as a confidant, and with somebody with whom they can share their deepest fears and concerns. One such experience was when I was mediating a case, a dispute where this lady had to, abandon her 8-month-old child and go away to her matrimonial home in Punjab. She comes back and she wants the custody of the child, and that was referred to mediation. Without going into too much detail about the case, what happened in this case was that I was the sole mediator there, and I was having a private session with her in which her counsel, a lady lawyer, was also present. What she did was she asked the lady lawyer, "Can you please step out? I want to discuss something with the mediator." And the lady lawyer obliged. She stepped out. And then this girl sat down and discussed with me some very intimate details of her married life. And I was quite surprised when she did that, because this was one of the, my first experiences where I could really, experience that emotional trust. And I asked her that, when she finished, I asked her that, have you discussed this with anybody else? And she said, not even with my own mother. And I said, may I ask you something? I said, why did you discuss this with me? And she said, I know that you're not going to judge me, and I know that I can trust you, she said. So that was a very moving experience for me, because here is a person, a lady whom I don't know. I have never met before. She doesn't know me, except for the fact that I'm sitting there as a mediator. And she discusses such information that she has not even discussed with her own mother. So that was a very moving experience for me. And that really, told me what mediation is all about, what kind of, transformative experience it can be. The second was when I was mediating a partition dispute between brothers and sisters. And there was a huge problem between them. And one of the brothers, the eldest brother, was claiming the lion's share in the property. and there was violence between them, physical violence. There were complaints, FIRs registered against each other. So all this was happening, and in the mediation, the mother used to come and sit there all the time, and she wouldn't say a word, and she would just be sitting quietly, and I could see the pain and anguish on her face as the children. She could see her children fighting with each other. And because of that, I used to be very nice to her. I used to talk to her for some time before starting the mediation. I would spend about 5 minutes with her, inquiring about her health, how she is. And then I would ask her if some proposal was being discussed, what she thinks about it. She would not respond. She'll just smile and say, "Let them decide, but I'll let them decide." This is how she would respond. So when the mediation failed, actually, it did not result in a settlement. So I looked at her and I said, "I'm really sorry, Ma. I couldn't do anything in this matter. Uh, I'm really very sorry," I said. And then she looked at me and said, she called me as, in Tamil, she called me as Beta, son. Said, "Son, I don't know who you are, where you're coming from. But for the past few days, you made me feel that, I'm still alive and I'm a human being. Not even my husband used to talk to me about anything. My children, to forget it, they are just so busy in their own fight that they never think about me. But for the first time, I saw somebody recognizing me as a person who's still alive and breathing and feeling. I don't know what I can do for you," she said. I said, "You give me your blessings." I said, I just, something made me touch her feet. So I had written my report, I had signed it, I touched her feet, and I walked out. And 10 minutes later, I was sitting and talking to a colleague of mine. And 10 minutes later, the siblings walk up to me and say, "We are settling." I said, "What happened?" I said, "You were not willing." They said that, "No, we saw that, the care and concern you showed our mother. And this is something that we have never done. And we realized what she's going through for the first time." So I think in her, we think that in her end, towards the end of her life, she should not be a witness to the kind of fights that we are having. So we decided that uh, more or less, whatever we have to accept, we'll accept and we'll settle this. So this was one of the beautiful experiences. That is why I always believe, that mediation is all about humanizing the conflict. It's not about, very abstract things like facts and law. It's about real concrete feelings of people, how they are, how they look at the situation, how they feel about it, how they perceive the conflict. So this is the kind of, system that we really need in our country, and in fact, in the whole world.
Oh,
Sorry, I
fantastic.
think I spoke too much.
No, no, no. I want you to speak. I really loved listening to you. But both the episodes you said, no, very inspiring, and particularly the second one, no, where it was the success of mediation was something like an anti-climax. The
Yeah.
mediation failed, and you had already apologized for the for not being not having been able to settle resolve the issue. But what happened after that? The uh, See, that is why John Ruskin says, human relations act chemically, not mathematically.
Not
We are
mathematics.
always thinking only in terms of arithmetic, mathematics, that logic. So here the mediation had failed, but something that happened outside the mediation, that is your conversation with
Yeah.
the mother, who was, in a sense, a bystander because she was not participating in the mediation. She was only sitting outside the mediation. But your genuine concern for that mother, who is pained by the fight between the siblings, between her children, uh, made you to empathize with her and show whatever moral, emotional support you could give her. You did that, and that changed the scenario. So the human element, that compassion, that love, concern, is what is most required in a mediator. Now the mediation succeeded more because of how you dealt with the mother who was outside the mediation than perhaps how you dealt with the issues that the
Yes.
siblings were bringing forth.
Yeah.
And when you mention this, I recollect a speech in which the pioneer of mediation, Mr. Sriram Panchu, recollected a family dispute resolution between a father and the son. When he resolved it, it seems the father told Mr. Sriram Panchu that yours is not a mediation center, it is a temple.
Yeah.
Because I have got my son back now. What happened was, whatever appeared to be a business dispute, Mr. Sriram Panchu went into the root of it, and it was not a business dispute at all. There
Yes.
was a misunderstanding between the father and son, who were working together, who were loving each other very much. For about 2 years, they got separated because of some incident. And
Yes.
when Mr. Sriram Panchu cleared that misunderstanding, everything was resolved. There was no business dispute at all.
Yeah.
What more can we expect from a profession or in life than such happiness that we give people?
Yeah. So essentially, because when I was in Madurai, we always call mediation as a peacemaking process.
Uh,
And I conducted this training recently about, I just came back from Madurai about 2 days back. And in Madurai, the lawyers who got trained, one of them came up with this. He said, "Sir, from what I understand, basically mediation is a peacemaking process." I said, "Well, you hit the nail on the head because you are now getting qualified as a peacemaker." I said. So it came from them instead of me telling them, because I always put in my LinkedIn post, I put hashtag peacemaking. But this was something that came voluntary from their side.
yeah, yeah. The Bible says, "No, blessed are the
The blessed are
peacemakers,
the
for they'll be
peacemakers.
called the children of God."
Yeah.
And perhaps peacemaking is the greatest requirement in the world, not only today, for any time for that matter, because everything depends on peace.
Yes.
See, if we look at what is happening in organizations, in the communities, everywhere, a lot of time is wastefully consumed in the prevailing contradictions, in the fights between people.
Conflicts.
So, if only people know how to prevent and resolve disputes and conflicts, all of us would be far more productive. There will be more wealth, more prosperity.
In fact,
Yeah.
I always I was very fascinated with one of the exercises that you do in the mediation
Uh,
training,
uh,
where you do certain actions and ask people what they have observed, and invariably most adults come up with their own assumptions. You are anxious, you're worried, you're waiting for someone. So all kinds of assumptions we see. So now, actually, that is the main cause of conflicts, because we assume a lot of things, and
yeah,
the way we perceive a situation based on our assumptions, and that gives rise to emotions, and that leads to conflict. So
yeah,
the most important thing is communication, and as a facilitator of communication, I think the mediator plays a very significant role in helping parties to take that balcony perspective, to
yeah.
look at the problem from a third person's perspective, and try to understand each other and come to a resolution that works for both of them.
Yeah, exactly. And in the third person's perspective, again, this mediation is a departure from the traditional third person perspective that we have come
Of
across. Generally,
adjudicate. Yes.
person, sir, he has a ready advice.
Yeah.
See, every person has ready advice, ready
Yes.
solution for the
Yeah.
problems of other people, but
Yes.
they don't have solutions for their own.
Exactly.
So it's what we are trained in mediation, not to offer solution.
William Ury, in one of his talks, talks about the third side in a conflict,
Uh,
because there are two
yes.
sides in a conflict. Now, he talks about the third side, and normally we don't pay attention to the third side, because the third side is the surrounding, the people who are around, the people
Mm.
in conflict, uh, the people who are family members, or friends, or the society at large, or the country itself, or the community. So this third side can play a very significant role.
And this listening with the sole purpose of understanding solves a lot of problems. In
Yes.
fact, though I had understood superficially the importance of listening, uh, after I came into the field of mediation only, I have understood its deep significance.
Significant.
Because sometimes by listening alone, we can solve the problem. In fact, in one book on negotiation, I was reading the same thing. He's saying that, see, that normally we talk about preparing. I'm from mediation. I'm now switching over to negotiation. I'm told mediation is nothing but facilitated negotiation. Uh, we talk about preparing well our points to present it during a negotiation. But that author says, no, don't do that. Instead, at the first sitting, go to the negotiation table with the full focus to listen to your counterpart, what
Yes.
he has to say,
Yeah.
and focus only on understanding what is in his mind and listening to him with interest. Perhaps that alone may solve the problem. Therefore, I say that a mediator succeeds when both the parties think that they don't need a mediator at all. They can
Yeah.
resolve the dispute themselves.
In fact, I read somewhere a good mediation is one where the parties feel that they have settled it themselves and mediator had nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do. Yes, yes.
Because
In fact,
ultimately, see, sir, what is the main USP of mediation is that it is a process of self-determination.
yeah,
And there is an element of finality to it simply because it is the party's own decision and they take responsibility for that decision.
yeah,
And it becomes their own, judgment in their own problem. So it's a conclusion that they come to after evaluating all the pros and cons. And the mediator just has to unravel those, hidden interests of theirs and help them to understand what is good for them in the long term. So once they understand that and they come to a conclusion and they take the decision that, okay, we want to settle this. Now there is an element of finality because they come to that conclusion after evaluating all the pros and cons, after discussing the issue threadbare, after understanding that this is the best possible solution that they can ever arrive at. Now, that satisfaction you can never get in any adjudicatory process, whether it is arbitration or litigation, because it's always the decision of a third party
yeah,
who has nothing to do with the whole dispute. So here you are empowering the parties to come to a conclusion as to how they want to resolve it. So that is, I think, one of the most important elements of mediation. I always tell the trainees that I train in mediation, I tell them, you don't own the problem, therefore you don't own the solution. So the
correct.
moment you take the responsibility of settling the matter, you're owning the problem.
uh,
The problem is not yours. So therefore, the
correct.
solution cannot be yours. It has to be the party's solution. So the moment you own that responsibility of settling the matter, your job is only to open their minds, to help them see different perspectives. Mediation is all about understanding the perspective and helping them to see from each other's perspective, or perhaps even shift the perspective and look at it from a different perspective, so that they are able to decide what is best for them. So the only problem is, see, when we all of us are victims of our own, we create a paradigm of the world based on our own experiences, the kind of beliefs that we grow up with, the kind of things that are taught to us, the religious beliefs, the ideologies that we follow. So we have our own way of, we have built a paradigm of the world, and we see the world for not as it is, but the way we see it. We are. So that leads to, the formation of various kinds of biases, which we are not even aware of most times. And that is what leads to the conflict, because two people's perception of the world is different. So a situation is perceived differently by two different people. And that's where you need a third party who can, not substitute their perspective for his own, but help them to understand each other's perception. So there the mediator can play a significant role, because keeping out her own biases or his own biases from the issue matter and trying to understand where the parties are coming from, understanding their perspective and helping them to understand each other's perspective, or maybe, perhaps look at it from a neutral perspective. So help them to look at it from a neutral perspective and see what is in their best interest to do. So that sometimes becomes the biggest challenge for a mediator, because we are all, knowingly or unknowingly, we are victims of our own biases. And mediators are not superhuman where they are devoid of any biases. But being
Yeah,
aware of what is happening to you and what
yeah.
what process your mind is going through and what kind of thinking you're going through is very important for a mediator, to be aware of what's happening.
Yeah, that is a challenge because you see, we mediators are also human beings, and we also have our own biases. And however much I may want to be unbiased, I may still be biased.
Yeah.
So only consolation is that I strive to be unbiased. I try to be neutral.
At least
I
become
want
aware. At least become
to
aware of
become
the
aware,
bias. Yeah.
so that when I feel that I'm judging. I can catch myself. No, I'm
Yes,
judging. I
absolutely.
shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Therefore, if the purpose of mediation is facilitated negotiation, negotiation is what should happen. It can happen, I believe, even without mediation through this one-on-one coaching and mentoring, uh, where in a sense it has got its every system has got its own advantages and disadvantages. This is not only in family cases but even in business. You may call it coaching, you may call it consultancy, whatever it is. What is in a name, what we want is the result. You also might have definitely encountered many such experiences. So what is your take on uh, negotiation?
See, I think coaching skills can play a very significant role in not only the kind of mentoring that you can do to a party where you're not actually in mediation with both parties, but you're just guiding one party to reach a resolution because the other party is not willing to come for mediation, but you're helping this party to go and negotiate with that party. I think uh, those skills are very important, sir, because even in a mediation itself, you're all the time you're doing a lot of coaching. Because how do parties negotiate with each other? Because you're having private sessions with them and you're trying to explore their interests and you're helping them to understand what's the most important thing for them, and also helping them to understand what the other side's situation is or what the other side's interests are. So, what we call as principled negotiation, as propounded by Roger Fisher and William Ury. Now, that is something that is actually because we always approach a negotiation from adversarial perspective. We always think that we have to get the best deal for ourselves, regardless of what happens to the other person, without realizing that this can have a long-term impact on the sustainability of the kind of agreement that we reach. Now, coaching them in principled negotiation. Now, how do you move parties from a very competitive framework to a collaborative framework is the challenge before a mediator or a coach, or should I say, a mediator and a coach. Because all the time, parties are having a very competitive approach. They are operating from their positions. They are trying to, get a best deal for themselves without really taking into consideration how it is going to impact the opposite person. So the challenge before the mediator is to shift them from those positions and what we call as the pin pyramid: positions, interests, and needs. So move them from their positions to understand what their interests are. And invariably, what happens, there is an overlapping area where the interests are concerned. Now, I can give you many examples, but for paucity of time, I refrain from doing that. But the thing is, there we usually find that when parties start understanding their interests, we see that there is a lot of overlapping area between those interests and what they need to really move forward. Like, for example, if let's say the husband and wife are fighting over a piece of property, and the wife wants that property to be settled in the name of the son, and the husband says no. And if you explore why this is important for the wife, you may perhaps come to know that the house is situated near the school, and therefore she wants to live in the house, and therefore she wants the husband to transfer the house in the name of the son. But her real interest is not the house itself, but a house near the school. Now, this is something that would be of interest to the father also, because the father does not want the child to travel a long distance to reach the school and wants the child to also be comfortable. And the father may come forward and say, well, if that is the important thing, then I will find a house for her near the school. So I'll pay the rent. So this actually happened in a mediation. And I used this example to explain how what is the difference between positions, interests, and needs. The parties came into the mediation with the position that I want him to settle that house in the name of my son. And the husband was saying, no, this is my ancestral property and it will go to my son only after me. But then when we explored the interest, we came to know that she was going to be staying a long distance away from the school. And it would be difficult for her to travel every day and drop the child in school and then pick the child up in the evening. And that would also compromise the safety of the child if she gets delayed or held up in traffic or something. And the discomfort for the child to travel all that distance and come every day. So the moment the husband came to know about this, now the common interest here was the welfare of the child. So this is something that this can happen even in commercial negotiations. Commercial negotiations, whether the contract should continue, what are the interests of the parties? Where do their interests lie? Is it important to continue the contract? Is it beneficial for them in the long term? Now, helping them to understand their underlying interests always helps them to come to a conclusion that works for both of them.
The Mediation Act 2023 has created awareness and interest um, in the lawyers, the law colleges, the law students, and young law graduates in mediation. Uh, so, what is your advice to those young people who want to take up mediation as a career, as a profession?
Sir, all along, our legal education has been, framed in such a way that it only trains you to be a problem inflamer, not a problem solver. So my strong belief is that the legal curriculum itself should undergo a transformation now, where an integral part of getting educated and trained as a lawyer should include the problem solving approach. Because right now, what we are teaching the law students are the laws and how to apply those laws, how to understand the rights and obligations, how to prove that, how to use the law to prove your client's case in the court. Now, that actually is a problem inflaming approach because it doesn't solve the problem. Now, mediation should be an integral part of the curriculum, and it should be made mandatory for students to go through the process to go through mediation training. Many of the law schools now have ADR as a component of their curriculum, but that is just a theoretical part of it. They don't actually train the law students in mediation. So what we today need are problem solvers and not problem inflamers, because the whole idea, the concept of conflict resolution is undergoing a transformation in the whole world, and we are lagging behind in it. So we need to start keeping pace with that. And that involves a full-fledged subject on mediation itself, how to approach the problem, how to solve the problem, how to facilitate, how to look at it from your client's perspective, and how to help your client to understand what the long-term interests are and what is the most important thing for your client, rather than push your client into a litigation that would be which would be a self-inflicted harm on the client. So this is what I would like to say, that first and foremost, the policy makers should start addressing this problem seriously, and they should bring about a transformation in the legal curriculum itself and include mediation as one of the integral and most important component of legal training. So having said that, I would like to also say that it's not that mediation should be the exclusive preserve of lawyers alone. Of course, lawyers are the biggest stakeholders in dispute resolution, but that does not mean that it should be only the exclusive fiefdom of the lawyers. This is something that needs to be spread far and wide, and we are talking. We are also thinking about peer mediation, where we want to go to the schools and teach children how to solve their own problems, how to mediate when there is a conflict between them, between their peers. So this is something that we should take it up seriously, because in his book Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, he talks about how important this kind of training is from a very young age. Because today we are not getting that kind of training, even in our schools. So it has to start from the school, and it should be more focused for law students, especially who are going to be the biggest stakeholders in the dispute resolution, paradigm. So this is where I feel that we need to have a serious relook. The Mediation Act is a big game changer today, because from the time we were struggling to get people to lawyers to agree to mediation, today lawyers are approaching us and saying, please mediate my client's case. And we are having lawyers referring matters to mediation. We are having arbitrators who feel that, okay, this matter needs to be mediated, and they're referring the parties to mediation. So this is where the transformation is coming about, thanks to the Mediation Act. But for some reason, the implementation of the act is getting delayed. I don't know for what. The very passing of the act has brought about such a huge change. And imagine what will happen once the act is passed. I think this is going to be a big game changer in the field of dispute resolution, because people are realizing that the courts are not the best way to resolve the dispute. Undoubtedly, the courts are necessary. They have to be there. Nobody is saying shut down the courts, but let the courts do justice where it is deserved.
So thank you, Jawad. It was we had a very interesting time discussing, and it is always nice to be talking to you. And I look forward to meeting you very soon and carrying on the discussion. Thank you.
Yes, it's been my pleasure and privilege. I thank SMC for this opportunity, Umar, and especially you, sir, for hosting this and for asking such in-depth questions and helping me to also think a little. Thank you so much.